my mom liked it. But my dad, he didn't much care for it. Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not the Jesus. However, there were a lot of Jesuses back then. It wasn't an uncommon name that the parents used to name a lot of the kids Jesus. But I remember, I think I was about his age. Yeah. Well, don't misunderstand me. Okay. I never knew the man. And I didn't believe in him. But I did meet him. Yes. Once. And I think I saw him as a child once. Yes. I can remember. It was vivid. My father and I, we were walking through a village on our way to see some relatives. And I saw a whole bunch of kids. They were all on this mud bank. And by the river, and they were throwing mud wildly at everyone. At houses and innocent bystanders, of which I happened to be one of them. As I went by these kids, all of a sudden I heard, "Hey, Jesus!" And I turned, and I saw this kid, this tall, lanky kid. And he threw a mud ball at someone else. And this kid was kneeling down. This other Jesus, he was kneeling down on his hands and knees, concentrating on his mound of mud. And I saw him as his head jerked by him, mud ball flew by. And he smiled at tall, lanky kid. And he laughed at what a poor aim his friend had. And his friend just smiled and turned back to his buddies. And, well, this boy, this other Jesus, he was about my age, but there he was, all caked in mud on his face and his hair, and all over his clothes, but yet he was concentrating on that mud. Well, just totally oblivious while the other kids were just flowing mud all over the place. They wanted abandonment and blissful chaos and innocence as children do. But it was a contrast. There was this Jesus around this mud mound, apart, but yet intent on accomplishing his purpose. Well, anyway, as time grew by, as I grew up, I heard about Jesus and the rumors and the stories about how they said that he was the Messiah. And my mother said that he was the Son of God. And my father, well, he thought he was the devil. And myself, I didn't say much of anything. I mean, after all, he was using my name. I mean, don't get me wrong, the name itself is okay. I mean, it didn't do me any harm. You know, why not, you know? I'll use it and use it for my own reputation. You know, my friends would stop and they'd tease me. And they'd say, "Hey, Jesus, turn that water into wine." And I'd laugh. You know, we didn't have the thought. But you know, something strange happened. There were these strangers. They would come into our village. And they had heard of Jesus. They had heard of me, that I was there. And that was fine. Because you know what? they treated me differently than ordinary person. Well, I was someone special. And they would ask me to bless their homes and their businesses, and sometimes heal their illnesses. No, I didn't see any harm in that. I mean, after all, he was using my name. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do this and build my own reputation now. I mean, come on, let's face it. Any of you would have done the same thing. If you could identify with a cause or a figure that could boost your own reputation in the eyes of your friends. Well, that was okay. So, I never realized it. I said to myself, Jesus, you know, I said I met him once, and I remember it was on a hillside. There were a multitude of people, and they were running up to him, and he was touching them, and he was blessing them, and healing them, one by one. And I thought, why not? So I mingled in with the crowd, and I went out and I grabbed his hand, and his hand felt just like anyone else's. I said, my name is Jesus too. And he just looked at me with that gaze stare. Didn't say anything. I have your name. Yes, how did I? And he just kept looking at me with that gaze stare. But I'm not anything like you. And then he smiled. And he spoke slowly. He said, no, not on the inside. No, not on the inside, but I have your name, haven't I? And I stumbled back, and I got lost in the crowd. I don't know why I'm thinking about that now, but you know, I've never forgotten it. Not on the inside. Well, I went back to my village and I told them, I'm not going to bless you anymore. I'm not going to bless your cross. All right? I'm not that man. I'm not that man, Jesus. And then one other time, I saw him again. He was on a hillside. But it was different. There were people clamoring about and going up to him to get closer and closer to this man named Jesus. And they ran up to him and they kicked sand in his face. And they rubbed gravel into the raw muscles of his back where he had been whipped. And as he passed by me, I could see his face. His eyes were closed, completely swollen and closed, and his cheeks were all swollen where they had slapped him over and over again. Dangling in strands where they had gone up and grabbed him and yanked on it and pulled it from the flesh by the roots. saw the mothers as they nailed flesh to wood. They huddled around their children and turned their faces inward. And his hands tore from the cross as the soldiers dropped the cross into the hole that they had dug to secure him. And yet, as I stared up at his face, I couldn't help but see that little boy on that mound, covered in mud. But no, his face wasn't covered in mud. But yet, he was again in the midst of a mob who was going up to him and jeering him and spitting on him and cursing his name into oblivion. I couldn't take it anymore. I had left, and I imagined that he died rather slowly. I don't know why. I remember that. But I remember one time I was going down the village, and I was going to get some fresh water. And all of a sudden, I heard, Jesus! Jesus! And I turned instinctively. And I saw this boy. He was coming towards me. He was running towards me. And he ran, and my eyes met his. He suddenly stopped. And for a moment, I gazed into his eyes. And the gaze reminded me of the gaze of that man on the hillside who was full of love and grace. And as he came towards me, he asked me, "Are you Jesus? Jesus?" And he looked bewildered and confused, and I said to him, "No, I'm not Jesus. Not on the inside." And he turned and sadly walked away. That question still haunts me. But I'll get over it. I always do.